Hello guys, this is the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 12 comparison, full HD plus 30 FPS footage. I'm just checking out dynamic range, so the sun is pretty much right behind me, and I just want to know how these phones do with dealing with dynamic range and sort of the harshness of sunlight on skin tone. So I don't know if you guys can see a difference in how the cameras process this, but yeah, let me know if you guys see a difference. And now let's move on to 4K 30 FPS and 4K 60 FPS footage as well. Alright, so now I've switched to 4K 30 FPS footage on both of these smartphones. Again, pretty similar thing that I want to try. I don't want to be testing stability and stuff like that, but I do want to test how good the skin tone processing really is on the smartphone. So I hope this gives you a good enough understanding of dynamic range and also stability in the process, because I am walking with both of these smartphones, so you'll be able to judge that as well. Let me know what you guys think. And last but not least, 4K 60 FPS just for completion. Alright, so this is 4K 60 FPS footage coming from both of these smartphones. Once again, my favorite dynamic range test right over here, but also the stability test. So let me know what you guys think about these video samples. Do you see any difference visibly? Because I don't really know until I check them out on my computer. But yeah, let me know stability wise, let me know quality wise, and that pretty much sums up the camera test. Before we get into the photos and the video samples, I just want to say the difference between the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 12 camera is very minuscule. So I've got the iPhone 11 here because the iPhone 12 I ended up returning. I'll make a separate video on why I did that in a short while. But the only major difference between the two cameras, they both have dual camera setups on the back. They have a front-facing 12 megapixel camera on the front, 12 megapixel and 12 megapixel, both the same on the iPhone 12 as well. The only difference is that the iPhone 12 comes with an f1.6 aperture, whereas the wide lens on the iPhone 11 has an f1.8 aperture. And the difference that it's going to make in the real world is of course going to be in low light photography and videos. And that's exactly what we're gonna find out in the comparison coming up. So with the specifications out of the way, they have the same ultra wide angle lens. Let's actually get into the photo samples that I took and dissect what the actual difference between the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 12 really is when it comes to camera performance. Okay, let's begin with some daytime photos. This is a picture of a flower which seems to be a bit saturated on the Apple iPhone 12 compared to the iPhone 11, but unless you absolutely nitpick, the photos seem pretty identical if you ask me. The first noticeable differences though show up in this picture sample. The detail on the greens of the shrubs are a bit more on the iPhone 12, especially in the shadows, and the blues of the sky seem to be processed a bit differently between the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 12. Here too, differences are subtle, but things seem to have a bit more contrast in the photo of the iPhone 12, but both are showing great dynamic range overall. Switching to the ultra wide angle lenses on both phones in the same position, things seem to be identical aside from, again, the higher contrast on the iPhone 12. We're seeing similar differences in the next set of pictures, and the iPhone 11, at least to me, seems to have a better looking image in this one with more natural colors. Finally, we've got this sample of a Lamborghini because let's face it, Dubai has a ton of these, and the photos seem to be fairly similar, a bit more sharpness on the iPhone 12, and just to me the dynamic range and the overall white balance of the iPhone 12 seems to be a bit superior, but nothing that is incredibly above the iPhone 11. While none of these phones have telephoto lens, I just want to throw in a comparison here to test the zoom performance of both of these phones and see whether or not there are any noticeable improvements. These are both phones using the wide angle lenses. Then we've got a sample at 2x zoom, and then we've got a sample at 5x digital zoom, which is the maximum possible on both of these smartphones. And aside from the iPhone 12 being a bit brighter, there doesn't seem to be much change on the overall detail and look of the image. Rounding up, we've got this front-facing camera sample from both of these phones using the portrait mode feature, and I think I tend to prefer the iPhone 12's image in this case because how it's managed to handle the sun in the background, but these things come down to personal preference more than anything, and you could very well prefer the iPhone 11 sample in this case. Following the photos, we've got daytime video. So we'll start off with 1080p 30 FPS footage here, and quite frankly, the warmer look of the iPhone 11 is what I seem to prefer, which may or may not align with what you think. There seems to be the same difference when it comes to using the ultra-wide-angle lens as well, but just the color balance from the iPhone 11 seems to be better, at least personally. To me, the iPhone 12 just looks a bit too bright and blown out, and this could be an effect of the Dolby Vision coming into play. Stabilization though from the iPhone 12 seems to be slightly more improved from these running samples, especially when using the ultra wide angle lens. So if you're looking for stability improvements, maybe the 12 is a worthy upgrade from the 11, but in terms of colors, I feel like the 11 is still far superior. The sample following this is of course 1080p 60 FPS, and it's much of the same story. The iPhone is going for the higher contrast look, and in doing so I just feel like it loses out. However, when using the ultra wide angle lens at 1080p 60 FPS footage, things look about the same both in terms of stability as well as dynamic range. At 4K 30 FPS, you also see the effect of Dolby Atmos come into the picture, at least from what Apple claims. But I feel like Dolby Atmos is present even at 1080p 30 FPS. From a visual standpoint, side by side, the differences are there, but these differences just seem to make things look brighter and blow out certain colors, which doesn't seem that good compared to the iPhone 11, at least to me. I'm sure when playing this content on a native Dolby Vision supported device, you'll see differences, but with content going through so many social media channels these days and the end result becoming very similar, it's really hard to differentiate between both of these samples at the end of the day. Finally, here's a look at 4K 60 FPS samples, which remain absolutely identical if you ask me, and to be fair, I think this demonstrates the widespread effect of Dolby Vision, not just at 4K 30 FPS but also at lower resolutions below that. Things look identical at 60 FPS because the effect of Dolby Vision is eliminated because the iPhone 12 does not support it at 60 FPS, and that could be another reason why samples from the iPhone 12 just come out generally brighter in the previous scenarios. Both phones can also film 4K 60 FPS ultra wide angle video, although you cannot switch during filming. You need to switch to the ultra wide angle lens prior to when you actually begin recording, so that's something just to keep in mind, and it's the same on both the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 12. With much of the day sampled out of the way, let's take a look at nighttime photos and video. Without night mode, you can already see the iPhone 12 taking the better image thanks to its f1.6 main lens, although with night mode, things are similar. While ultra-wide angle pictures from neither phones look too good, the iPhone 12 allows for night mode on the ultra-wide angle lens, which makes a difference, but in extremely low light situations, it may also introduce unwanted noise. This is another sample, and we'll go over the same set of samples once again just so you guys can see how much of difference each lens and each nighttime processing mode makes. There doesn't seem to be any big changes between the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 12 unless you're in extremely dark situations like the picture earlier, or if you want to use the ultra wide angle lens, especially with night mode, which works much better in this scenario on the iPhone 12 given the setting and how much more light there is. Once again, this is another picture that shows the difference between the f1.6 lens on the iPhone 12 and the f1.8 on the iPhone 11, but a similar pattern with night mode is seen, where the iPhone 11 bumps it up and you get a pretty similar image if you're using night mode on the primary lenses on both of these devices. There also seems to be some performance improvements in the ultra wide angle lens by default, but the notable changes really come when you use the night mode option on the iPhone 12, which again is not present on the iPhone 11. Now, I don't know if the iPhone 11 will get this feature in a future software update, but I'm guessing if it does, the iPhone 11's camera hardware and processing will come really close to rivaling what the 12's is already in these situations, so maybe Apple might just do that, although nothing is confirmed. Selfies in the dark also tend to look better on the iPhone 12, and the iPhone 12 even has a night mode with its selfie camera, which isn't the best, but it definitely does a better job than the iPhone 11. Now, moving to nighttime video, the brighter video performance we saw earlier actually comes in handy for nighttime video. It seems to enhance the overall experience when taking videos, and the color balance between both the lenses is also a bit different, but honestly the differences seem very minuscule at best if you ask me. 60 FPS performance on the iPhone 12 though seems better, so at 1080p 60 FPS in terms of sharpness, you do get better quality results over the iPhone 11, but when using the ultra wide angle lens at this resolution and frame rate, it's honestly best if you avoid this because things can become very unusable quite quickly. Next up is 4K 30 FPS footage, which does look a lot better on the iPhone 12, but I think that comes down to, once again, the brightness levels and the implementation of Dolby Vision perhaps, which works well in this case, but not in other cases like we've seen throughout the video. But let me know what you guys think about Dolby Vision overall. Do you think it's a killer feature to have, or do you think it's a feature that you can live without? And with that, I think it's time to wrap up this comparison. These are the last few samples that I've got. 4K 60 FPS using the wide angle lens first, where again, I think the iPhone 12 has an edge, but with the ultra wide angle footage, both are equally unusable if you ask me, so no changes there whatsoever. Okay, and with that, we're at the end of this camera comparison. I hope you guys found this useful. This was a very real world test if you ask me. None of these samples were like edited, doctored in any way, shape or form. So these are just general samples that you take on a daily basis. And hopefully this gives you insight on how much better or how equal the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 12 come in certain cases, and how much of a difference the iPhone 12 makes and in what scenarios. If you found this video useful, make sure you comment down below and give this video a like rating because it helps out a lot. Thanks for watching. Do subscribe for more videos coming up. This was Vaibhav and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.